There are a lot of retail investors who don't know how to read a newspaper. So that is why I am making this video. There is a specific way of reading a newspaper as a retail investor. If you are reading a newspaper for general knowledge, then it is okay. You don't need to watch this video. But as a retail investor, if you are reading the Economic Times, say for example, there is a specific technique to do that. And I want to share this with you in this video. So how do you read a newspaper as a retail investor? First thing you need to understand is subscribe to Economic Times. Okay, so first it is very cheap and they will deliver the newspaper to you on a daily basis. So subscribe to Economic Times. It is a goldmine of information if you are a retail investor. Number one. Number two, when you open Economic Times, there are three types of news there. Number one is macro news. Macro news means where there is discussion about GDP, then inflation, then RBI, then interest rates, and then industries, and what's going on a macro level. So I call this macro news. Ignore all of that. You don't need to look at the macro news, because something like the movement of interest rates or inflation, it's nobody knows what is going to happen there. So it is an information that is not knowable. Okay. So we don't want to go into information which is not knowable and which is not important for us as retail investors. We need to look at individual businesses. So forget about the macro news. It's a waste of time. The macros keep changing all the time. The fundamentals of the business don't change by much. So number one, macro news, ignore. Number two, there is political news. There are a couple of pages where you will see political news. Ignore all of that. We don't want to look at politics and all of that. We need to know the facts. So the third type of news that you will see, which I said just now, is fact-based news. You look at individual company news. So for example, if the promoters of Dabur are interested in buying Everready Industries, then you need to ask, why is it so? Why would you invest in a different industry? Or if a company like Ashok Leyland decides to invest 1,000 crore to manufacture electric vehicles, so you need to ask, why are they putting in so much of money? If two banks are merging, that's a fact-based news. That is what is happening on the ground. Okay, if a company receives funding, outside funding, or a startup maybe, that's business news. That is something which is happening on the ground. Learn to differentiate between fact and opinion. So read news which is related to a specific company. We need to read company specific news, and we need to read fact-based news. Okay, so these are the three types of news: macro, political, and company specific. As a retail investor, your knowledge will start to improve because now you have ground level knowledge. So if the Adani Group is acquiring Ambuja and ACC, that is fact. That is fact-based news. That is an event that has already happened. Okay, and you need to know that as a retail investor, because as you read fact-based news, your knowledge about companies will begin to improve. Say, for example, you open Economic Times today and you read 10 fact-based news. So you now have knowledge about 10 companies in the market. They may be private, they may be listed, but now you have knowledge about 10 companies. So 10 industries, say for example, they are in different industries. So daily, if you are reading 10 fact-based news, by the end of the month, you will know something about 300 companies. When you know something about 300 companies, the breadth of your knowledge about business, about the business world begins to improve. Your breadth of knowledge is increasing. To increase the depth of knowledge, that is where we go into annual reports and all of that. But at least the newspaper will help you increase the breadth of your knowledge. Now you can talk about Britannia, Dabur, Ambuja Cement, Asian Paints, Castrol, Pidilite, because these kind of news are getting reported in the newspaper. So you know something about each company, and Just by reading the news, you can say whether the company is doing well or not doing well. Okay. So reading fact-based news is very important. You might not know everything about Britannia. Okay. You might not know 10 years of history of Britannia, but at least you will know what is happening in the company right now. Okay. Next, in the newspaper, you will find sections where companies, after every quarter, they publish their quarterly results in economic times. Okay, not every company is doing it, but some companies, a lot of companies do it. So if you look at those quarterly reports, everything is there. All the numbers are there. You can look at the profit and loss account. You can look at the equity capital. It will tell you how much money the promoter has invested in the business. And it will also tell you how much profit they are making on an annual basis. If you just compare those two numbers, you will see which company is making money, which company is not making money. And generally, it is printed in a way that the company is trying to promote itself. So be careful of that. Okay, focus on the numbers. Don't focus on the presentation. Next is look for specific events. So for example, if the company that owns Bharat Matrimony, if they announce a buyback, okay, that's an event. That's a very significant event. If a company is doing buyback, that means it has a lot of cash and it is buying back its own shares and whatnot. So that is a trigger which you can use to go into depth. Okay, so if a company is announcing a buyback, that is improving your breadth of knowledge. Now you want to go deep. So now you have to look at that company's annual report and improve the depth of your knowledge. Okay. So these are triggers which you get from the newspaper. Next is learn to follow a story. As I mentioned, there was a day when I read that there are a lot of companies that want to acquire Ambuja Cement and ACC Cement. I read that news article. And one of the bidders was Adani Group. And I just looked, I was just thinking, Adani Group already has a big presence in the infrastructure space in India. For them, this would be a great buy. And after a week or so, as I opened the newspaper, the front page news was that Adani has acquired Ambuja and ACC Cement. So that is how the story of a company gets built into your mind. If you have been reading newspaper for the past 10 years, imagine how many companies you must have read about if you followed this system of ignoring the macro and political, but only looking at company specific news. So daily, if you're reading about 10 companies, in a month, you are reading about 300 companies, right? In a year, you are reading about 3,000 companies. Let's say there are some duplicates. So for example, you may not read about 300 unique companies in a month. So out of say 3,000, maybe you learn about 1,000 or 1,500 companies in 1 year. That is also a huge amount of knowledge. You have practical on the ground knowledge. These are the things that you will not learn in a college or in a university. These are the things you learn only when you read the newspaper. So learn to follow the story of a company. That is what I do. I enjoy reading the newspaper because I know when I read a news article, I have some reference in my mind because maybe 1 week ago I read about the story. Now the story is developing. So everybody likes to read a story. Next, look at full page ads. Sometimes what happens is the moment you open Economic Times, the front page of the Economic Times is filled with ad of a single company. So what does that tell you? That tells you that this company is making a lot of money. The fact that they are promoting themselves on the front page of Economic Times, which is a very valuable real estate in print media. So that means they are spending money. Unless they have money, why will they spend money? So that gives you an idea of which company is making money, which company is not making money. Next, learn to identify or understand frauds. There is a lot of, in every day's newspaper, you will find one or the other fraud story. Some company commits some fraud and the banks are not able to recover their money and something. Okay. So read about frauds. That will tell you which companies to not invest in. Okay. So always read about frauds. Always, and there are some articles where you will learn the entire story of a company. You may not know a particular company, but there are certain articles where they talk about the entire history or the story of the company. So if you read that article, suddenly within a few minutes, there is a new company on your radar, right? So do all these things. Read the newspaper as a retail investor very intelligently. You will find a lot of clues, not just from quarterly reports, but also some specific events like buybacks and also full page ads. These are triggers which you can use to improve the depth of your knowledge. Thank you so much.